All right, guys, what's going on? We're back with another couple of stories here for you today. First, I want to talk about a story out of Butterfield Bermuda Championship and what happened on the 10th hole with Danny Lee. This is an interesting little situation where Danny Lee actually drove into another group that was on the green. Now, for this particular hole, you have to hit your tee shot over the trees in order to drive the green, and for most of us common folk, this would not be possible, but for these PGA Tour pros, of course, this is something they're going to do to get on the green off of their first shot. So Danny Lee actually drove the ball into the group in front of him, and the TV cameras were actually looking at the putt of Scott Gutschewski on the number 10 hole when the ball came into the frame and settled on the far end of the green. Nobody was really sure what happened at first, which is kind of interesting. But at the press conference, Danny Lee actually said, I've been getting a lot of DMs about number 10. I mean, hitting up on the green. I mean, first of all, I apologize to everybody, and I apologize to Scott. I watched it on TV too, how close it almost hit him. Thank God it didn't hit him. He then went on to explain that he had no idea that anybody was on the green in front of him, because by the time they showed up to the 10th tee, the group in front of them was not on the fairway, so they assumed that they were probably up on the green, and he gave them another couple of minutes before hitting his first shot. His first shot actually went out of bounds, hit the cart path, and went out of bounds to the right, and then he had to hit a provisional shot to get a better line, which is the one that ended up landing on the green. Now, the interesting thing about this is he didn't even end up playing that provisional shot because he did find his original ball, and he did have to hit that in, getting a bogey on the hole. This ended up with him posting a 67 for the round that left him tied for fourth. Danny Lee sits tied for fourth heading into the weekend, and he's seeking his first top 10 finish on the PGA Tour since March of 2020. Next up, we're going to talk about Greg Norman and how he was named the CEO of LIV, L-I-V, Golf Investments. This is an upstart entity behind a new 10-event series on the Asian Tour that's going to debut in 2022 and will feature tournaments across Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. This is going to be a series that is sponsored by Golf Saudi, and they're, of course, involved in the new partnership between LIV Golf and the Asian Tour. There's still a lot of questions around this, so it's interesting to see what's going to happen, but this is only the beginning, according to Greg Norman. Now, the idea of a global golf tour has been tossed around for ages. This is something that people have been wanting to do to rival the PGA Tour. Of course, we've got the European Tour, but there is not really a worldwide tour that can compete with the level of skill that we see on the PGA Tour. So this is going to be something that is going to push that to the next level and actually have these different events in other parts of the world. Now, it's worth mentioning that Golf Saudi has put on the Saudi International since 2019, which is an amazing event on the European Tour, and it's drawn some of the biggest stars from around the game, Dustin Johnson, who is a two-time champion, as well as others like Phil Mickelson and Bryson DeChambeau. It's worth noting that these players have gotten massive appearance fees, so obviously there was a little bit of an incentive for them to show up just to play. They don't even need to necessarily play well, and they're still going to get paid. Now, this is going to be interesting because I think the question that is in everybody's mind is who's going to go and play in these events? If there's anybody who's trying to get to the top level of the game, they're either playing on the European Tour or the Korn Ferry Tour and eventually trying to make their way to the PGA Tour, which is, I think, widely considered to be the highest level of the game. Anybody who is playing on the PGA Tour is arguably playing against the best players in the world. If somebody were to leave the PGA Tour and go play on this other tour, they'd be giving up potentially huge purses of winnings, and they'd be giving up the notoriety of playing at the top levels. It's going to be interesting to see who wants to go out there and actually play on this tour rather than playing in the PGA Tour, where perhaps the notoriety, the skill level, and of course the prize money is going to be much bigger. If there's players who want to go out there and participate in just one or two of these events, they're probably going to have to get approval from the PGA Tour in order to do that, just knowing that this is a one-off thing. It's worth noting that there's notable players. Dustin Johnson's agent has confirmed that his client has listened to proposals and also told Golfweek that Johnson has sought approval to play in the 2022 Saudi Invitational. Ricky Fowler has called the idea of a new tour definitely interesting, while Phil Mickelson outlined what he sees as a potential benefit for fans. Phil says, "I think the fans would love it because they would see the best players play exponentially more times. Instead of 4 or 5 times, it'd be 20 times. I don't know what the final number is. However, that's a big deal to give up control of your schedule. I don't know if the players would be selfless enough to do that. But every other sport, the entity or teams or leagues control the schedule. The players kind of play where they're told to play, whereas here, we're able to control it. This is something that's really interesting about golf that's different from other sports, is that the players get to decide which events they want to go to and which events they want to play, skip, take time off, or, whatever, the like. So this is really interesting that golf is set up this way, whereas if you've got a basketball team or football team, soccer team, whatever, you're going to have regular games and you're expected to attend those games, and, the league controls how that game is set up. Whereas with the PGA Tour or these other tours, they basically host these events that are sanctioned by the tour, and the players can choose whether or not they want to actually attend and play at that event. The eventual success or failure of this upstart tour will hinge almost entirely on whether players are willing to leave behind the familiarity of the PGA Tour establishment for an unproven entity with a controversial source of funding. That, like so much of this new tour, remains incredibly unclear. All right, now this last story for you here, guys, is really going to hit home. This is something that's incredibly powerful and very meaningful, not only for us, but for this individual. And he says, "I will never forget this, why this pro's lone PGA Tour start was so meaningful." This story here is about Brian Morris, who's the 54-year-old head pro at Bermuda's Ocean View golf course, and he's scheduled to receive his 32nd chemo treatment on Monday. He was given a sponsor's exemption into the tournament and played the first 2 rounds alongside his cousin and fellow Bermuda pro, Michael Sims. This is really cool news because he's the head pro there at the club, and he finished 25 shots behind his closest competitor and 39 shots shy of the cut line. So it wasn't necessarily about being able to play at the highest level, but just to play in the event at all. Unfortunately for Brian, in December of 2019, he was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal brain cancer. He described the event saying, "It's like tranquility for me. I don't have time to think about being sick. I don't feel sick. I don't act sick." He said, "Just because I'm playing golf, I don't have any time to think about anything like that. I'm just hitting shots and trying to make putts and trying to stay out of the bunkers." He ended up posting rounds of 89 and 92, and when he tapped in on his final hole on Friday, he raised his arms in victory as the emotion of the moment overcame him. This is the opportunity of a lifetime, and I'm sure he's going to never forget this for the rest of his life. The ability for him to get away from this and actually play on the PGA Tour is just absolutely phenomenal. I'm sure this is a lifelong dream of his. For somebody who's a head pro, he obviously loves the game of golf and is very involved in it, and so getting this opportunity, given his situation, is incredible. He says at the end of the day, "I hope I inspire people. When things happen this way, all the bad stuff, you just see how much people love you. To be able to do this is amazing." So with that said, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed these stories here today. If you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll be releasing new videos just like this as often as possible. Thank you for watching. Catch you in the next one.